Ladies and gentlemen, once again, we have. Can I call you my mentor?
You can
Officially.
call. Now, remember, the word mentor
Yeah.
is always capitalized
Ah,
because it's a name. He was Telemachus's tutor. And, the Iliad and the Odyssey,
yeah.
Ulysses' son, Telemachus, had a tutor named Mentor. So it's a proper name. And it is why I think that's important to remind people about is that here's a person who's so important in Western civilization that we've taken his name and we've made it into a wonderful term.
Hmm.
We have taken someone. Wouldn't it be great? I mean, 5,000 years from now. Oh, you are such a Gregory to me. Wouldn't that be just great? Wouldn't that
Yes. Imagine. You're such a Dan to me. I
you're
can't
such a
believe it.
Dan,
Can I call you my Dan?
You can call me my Dan. Yes.
I love this. Oh, I didn't know. And the story, Odyssey, is that a Greek story? What
Oh
a
yeah.
Spartan story? Right?
No, not Spartan.
Homer,
Yeah, it
right?
is. Okay, okay. I guess there's a hint of Spartan there, but yeah. So Ulysses was the person who did not want to go to fight the Trojan War. He did everything he possibly could to get out of it. He thought the whole idea was stupid, and then he has this massive 10-year adventure getting home. Depending on how you read it, a lot of things
Mm.
happen. But the most important scene is the boys get cocky and they have a discus throwing competition, and Ulysses kicks their butt. And once again, discus throwing once again shows up all the time. Yes.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Because I am now. Oh, I have to finish the introduction. For those who don't know, I mean, we're on Spotify as well now. So some people maybe don't see your face and maybe they recognize your voice. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the almighty Dan John with us, legendary strength coach. And like I said, my mentor, I can call him my mentor. I've learned so many things from this man, which I'm incredibly grateful for. I value each and every word that he says, and I ponder it, I think about it, and I I realize and I understand that he's so far ahead and so far ahead because you've been doing this for so long, right? So you have seen so many things, and us youngins, we need to listen a little more to the ones who went before
Yeah.
us and learn from the wisdom. So
Yeah, let's pick up right
yeah.
on that. I was listening to an interview with someone I have great respect for, my mentor, a guy named Clarence Bass, who's his books are called Ripped, Ripped.
Hmm.
He's a famous bodybuilder who got down to 2.4% body fat.
Wow.
And the person interviewing him wasn't doing a very good job because the person had no grounding in the history of our sport. So now Clarence is probably 20 years older than I am. I think almost exactly. It's pretty close. And he's still doing fine, still working out, still kicking butt. And it was interesting because the person kept thinking that the way we trained always has been bombing, blitzing, high protein, specific body part, the basic bodybuilding. And no
Hmm.
offense, I'm going to add a word here. Bodybuilding nonsense that's become the way we do things in the same way.
Hmm.
And there's problems with that because,
Hmm.
and I don't want to get anti-steroid or anything, but for example, to be successful on certain diets, it really helps to take anabolics.
Hmm.
Um, and you can see it online. There's a lot of Instagrammers who will tell all these things. Follow me, and it's clear they're using juice. Or on the female side, this is what a young bodybuilder friend of mine. She goes, there's two drugs. One's called, it starts with a T, and the other one is clenbuterol,
Hmm.
which was
Trend.
actually
Trend, right?
Trent.
Trend
There you
and
go,
clean.
Trent.
Yeah.
Trent and Clen. That's exactly
Train
what
hard, train hard and eat clean. That's what they
yeah.
say.
And they're telling these things, and it's just like, and so the problem with most people when they listen to us, Gregory, is that almost universally people think when I'm talking about body composition, and what they're hearing is I want to look good at the pool party so I can hook up with hotties for a one night stand. And that is obviously that's part of our field. That is, and it truly is.
Hmm.
Or I want to look good at a wedding. I want to look good at a
Hmm.
reunion, and that's all fine.
Hmm.
but that's not how we train. That's not how, for example, I used this example years ago. I was helping this guy. This guy had died, and his family asked me to help move his stuff out of his house. So I showed up my pickup truck, and I'm just throwing stuff in the back. And this other boy from Tooele out here, Tooele, Utah, shows up, and I start carrying a box over because it's his grandfather, and I'm about to put it in the back of his pickup truck. He's, no, 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 no. Don't put it in my pickup truck. I don't want it to get scratched. And I stopped and I thought to myself, this is it. So at the time I was probably early 50s, and he was probably 21, 22. And he liked to take his shirt off and prance around. He didn't carry a single box of his own grandfather's into any trucks, and he wouldn't let anybody put any of his stuff in his truck. So he looked good prancing around but he couldn't do shit when it counted. He couldn't carry a couch. He couldn't carry boxes up a flight of stairs and put them in his deceased to help out his family. Mm-hmm. So it's great to look good, but I mean, if a fight breaks out, I want shot putters and wrestlers on my side, and you can have the bodybuilders on your side if a fight breaks out. And it's an issue because you got Jane Fonda with Go for the Burn. You got Arnold with Go for the Burn. Mm-hmm. You've got all these burn. And the truth is, if you want to throw the discus far, if you want to put big weights overhead, if like what happened to me last year, if 2 trees get knocked down in your backyard in a storm, mm-hmm. you don't need to look good to carry stumps and limbs for about 8 hours a day for 2 days. So our whole neighborhood lost about 70 trees in one storm. Wow. And basically for about 3 days, about 12 hours a day, I carried stumps and wood. And folks, I don't know what muscle picking up a stump does and throwing it into a big waste container. And I don't know what value it is. I don't know what muscle it works when you saw a limb off. I'm not sure. But when a tree is on your house, you're not going to ask what muscles this works. Or if this is, Dan, so you worked 12 hours, 3 days in a row. What, was that a fat burning thing? Yeah, it was fat burning. Yeah, I burned a lot of fat those 3 days. Because if I wasn't, I'd be still repairing this house. Yeah.
Most definitely. And what you're saying, but before I want to mention this, I wrote it down because it's such a beautiful segue into what I have some questions about and what I'm highly interested to get your opinion on. But what happened in this interview between your mentor and...
Oh, Clarence Basson. It was just interesting because the guy kept saying, well, you know, Clarence, you know, I think you'll agree with me that you need to have protein drinks and eat protein in every meal and, you know, be, you know, zero carb and no fat. Mm-hmm. And Clarence just kind of goes, no, I don't agree with that at all. So it's interesting. The guy who's clean and 2.4% body fat doesn't agree with what the other guy was saying. So but there's an important thing here, Gregory, that I want you to almost memorize. Always listen to the best and brightest in every field. Mm-hmm. You know, get it in Earl Nightingale. He always talks about the top 5%, and the top 5% means you got to be 1 in 20. And in my career, I've always tried to be in the top 5% of everything I did as an instructor, as a professor. Mm. You know, I mean, I tried to be a 1 in 20 father. You know, I tried to always be not the best because that's really hard to do, but I always tried to be in that conversation as pretty good, you know? Hmm. And when you're looking for advice, like for example, you had a choice, you're in Germany now, right?
Switzerland.
Oh, you're in Switzerland.
Yeah.
You know, okay. You guys had a great shot putter a long time ago.
Werner Günther. Yeah.
And so if you're looking for shot put advice, you'd go to Werner. Mm-hmm. You know, I can give you some good ideas, but he threw a lot more meters than me. Mm-hmm. So go talk to him for 20 minutes. And when he tells you to do, you know, if he says you got to do snatches and squats, but then you talk to somebody who's not very good and they say, oh, it's all bench press. Listen to who you're getting advice from. Most people don't. And, you know, if you come to my house, Gregory, I got 6 bedrooms, 3 baths. I got a 4-car garage with a gym in most of it. I got a sauna. I got a hot tub, massive deck. If you want to talk to somebody about, and I have 3 grandchildren, I've got a real normal life. I'm not some weirdo. You know what I mean? That, I don't, for all I eat for breakfast is, sardines that I, got out of the North Sea with my bare hands. And I live on a rock. And I live on a rock. Yeah. And my only food is shark liver mixed with brewer's yeast. And I put it in a blender and I drink 2 gallons of 4 liters of that every day.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to just sit back and go, who am I listening to? Mm-hmm. And there are some real weirdos out there, and there are some.
And you know what I see from my point of view, because trying to make a name for yourself in the, let's say, like whatever field you want to pick. Let's just pick the kettlebell world or fitness world. And with these new mediums that we have, these new possibilities to make your voice heard, I do understand why people come up with crazy concoctions of ideas and marketing slogans, because they want to stick out from the rest of us, or they want to make themselves heard, because there's so much noise that you have to almost do something very crazy in order to get heard. Yet I've realized as well, this is a short-term view. And long-term, as they always say, right? The cream rises to the top. So you have to just put in the work, stay at it. But I do understand why there's so many weirdos out, because people want to make a name for themselves, right?
Well, and it's a lot sexier. I mean, there's a girl on YouTube who pushes the idea of eating 50 bananas a day. That's her whole, and among other things. Mm-hmm. And she's genetically gifted. I mean, she would look good if she ate 49 bananas a day. Okay. 51 bananas a day. Mm. But I know who she is because she's so out there. Now, having said that, I can't in good conscience encourage someone to follow that path. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. And you can I remember when kettlebells first came, one of the most popular things to do was juggle them. Mm-hmm. And I remember we were I was with the McCarthy, not McCarthy brothers, but that's close enough. McNamara brothers. Mm-hmm. And they were showing me figure eights, and it was just like doing it with the basketball. You'd swimming around your legs and you whirl around your body, and they would do these snatches where they would let go of the bell and catch it in one hand and do it.
Yeah.
And I said, that's great stuff. And then I said, and I would never use this with my athletes, because and they both said, yes, absolutely. We just do this for fun. Mm-hmm. It's not training. You get a good workout, but it was a fun way to.
Most definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so funny thing is, this is where, and funny thing is, this is actually where when you follow down the history path, of which I have recently, I did a video on it, and I had a great conversation with Geronimo Milo, who is, I would say, he's the Sean Mosen or the Pavel Tsatsouline of Argentina. So he brought one of the first kettlebells there, and he's an awesome guy. And he made this incredible research into kettlebells, and actually come to find out that kettlebells...
Wait, he wrote that book?
Yeah. Kettlebell
He sent me a copy of it.
Oh, awesome. You got to read it.
Holy cow, that thing is...
Yeah, it's powerful. And it's crazy how I really went down the rabbit hole. And I did a video that's like 20 minutes. I really, really went deep. And the crazy thing is that the physical culturists from Europe actually started lifting with kettlebells. And that was, and it goes back into Germany from the Turnvaters, the Jan and Gutsmuts, that's 1800, 1900. Then you have the book that I have read, which is beautiful because Geronimo sent it to me, and it's in German, from Theodor Siebert. And Theodor Siebert was also heavy. He was the father of athletics in Germany. And from there, it spilled over into Russia because, and that's the funny thing, is because you had a very famous figure called Dr. Krajewski.
Yeah.
And Dr. Krajewski traveled Europe because he knew there are some crazy German, French, English, and Swiss or whatever Italian dudes who lift crazy amounts of weights and do crazy stuff with it. And even before then, you had guys like these names are escaping me now, but these crazy strongmen from Italy who started, and then they were teaching it down, to their people. And you even had women, the first strong women, who were lifting and throwing kettlebells. And Dr. Krajewski took what he learned in Europe, took it to Russia, and him and I forgot his name as well, another Russian who was his student, they then cultivated kettlebells to a degree where then it almost seems that the kettlebell comes from Russia, because they cultivated long cycle, clean and press, snatch. But funny thing is, you have a guy named Pitla, who was a Polish guy, and he's called the father of Greco-Roman wrestling in Poland. He actually developed some kettlebell exercises. So it's crazy how it all started in Europe, kind of. And then it was taken to Russia, and from there, it cultivated in Russia. And then that's why the funny thing is, I told this Geronimo, I told him, I always said that Pavel started a kettlebell revolution. But after reading his book, I said, actually, Pavel created a kettlebell renaissance. So there's a difference. Kettlebell was prevalent before.
Completely unplanned, but this is a book called the Track and Field Omni Book. And it's a book this is the book course. This is the book that changed my life. So, but let me just, I don't know where it would be good. You got 10 seconds here?
Yeah, of course.
Well, this, I'm just trying I'm making the mistake of, this is unprepared, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, I mean, it's just, but when you look at the pictures in here, you'll see kettlebells being utilized.
Yeah.
This is from 1971. And I saw my first kettlebells, and here's the hammer throw. And just on this page, you see two kettlebell exercises. Yeah. So the first kettlebells I ever saw were in it's either 74 or 75. And it's when the USSR track meet happened over at Berkeley, and their hammer throwers were training at the College of San Mateo. So I went and watched. And here's why this is interesting. After that, guys like Lance Deal and some other throwers invented what they thought they saw. And so in America, the tradition was called PUDS, P-U-D-S, because what they heard wasn't, this is PUDS.
Pud, the Russian word for 16 kg, right?
They heard PUD. So in America, we had throwing weights throughout my whole career. I never used them. It was much more of an East Coast thing, but it was basically a piece of lead with a little wire hanger, and you threw it.
Yeah.
But it came from the kettlebells that the Soviets were using. And so really, it's funny because Gill Athletics, I still think sells throwing PUDs. I still think they sell them.
Wow.
But you have to understand the history to get, So you're right. And, when you study the history of the Olympic lifts, it's very convoluted. It's much different than you want. It's not smooth. It's not simple.
Yeah. But that's the beauty of it. It's when I really dig deep on this kettlebell stuff. I love what Geronimo says. He says, listen, these ring weights, they used to call them ring weights when the Germans.
Ring weights were a little different, right? Yeah. They were more like a Highland game throwing implement, right?
A little bit. But they in even Theodor Siebert mentioned ring weights, Ringgewichte, right? So he mentioned them in his book from 1907, I think, or 18 something, at the beginning of the 20th century. So 19 something was the second edition that he put out. So he already mentions these things. And that's what the fascinating thing is, that the kettlebell was around for so long, but here it goes, and that's what I love what Geronimo says. He says, for example, listen, they were weights on markets, we know this, and of course it may be that some Russian farmer out in the tundra of Siberia started throwing around these things. Yes, but the problem is we have no record, we have no evidence that we can point towards it. And then he even talks about the origins of the Turkish get-up, which I was like, oh, now I know, I understand where it comes from. The idea was just getting up with a weight, right?
Yeah.
And originated
it was a wrestling
with
practice. Wrestling
yeah.
practice.
And the funny thing is it originated with a barbell, not with a kettlebell. So people were trying to get up having a weight, right? That's the idea. And the funny thing is they were looking at people, how they stand up, and there's this one particular phase in the Turkish get-up where you're sitting, right? And you have the hand behind you. And so I told Geronimo, from my culture, I know for a fact that my relatives and my people love to sit like this. We love to sit like this, and the funny thing is, we love to sit not on the couch, we love to sit on the floor. So that's some kind of a Turkish sitting position. But it's not just Turkey, it's all Yugoslavia, it's Croatia, it's all, all the Balkans do it. So then I can imagine that somebody looked at these folks, especially Vas, I think Vas was his name, or Vas, I can't remember. And then they were like, you're getting up from a Turkish position. So this is kind of like how Turkish get-up got mixed in it, but it's not from Turkey. But I heard this story that it came from the oil wrestlers, which is not the case, actually, when you have the evidence that Geronimo presents. It's fascinating.
I want to make a broad point here. So Earl Nightingale is someone I really follow. I followed his work a long time. He's no longer with us, but he's a genius. He says something that I need to say is so important in our field. He says, every business you go to, someone's sitting here like this saying, yeah, I invented the Post-it note, but no one listened to me, and somebody else got the invention. I invented the steering wheel. Nobody listened to me, and somebody else got the credit. Back in the mid-1980s, when I was an American football coach, I was tinkering with this idea it's now called RPO, run, pass, option. But guess what? I didn't have the courage to push it far enough. Since I invented the goblet squat, which I did, so many people claim, well, we were doing that before. And good for you, but you didn't put it out there. I wrote an article for Men's Health. I put it out there in the RKC and Dragon Door. I was the one who didn't just take the idea. I risked the putting it out there. So yeah, it could be very true that some Russian farmer out there was doing this, and I'm sure it was. I'm sure. Like high jumping. Try to find who invented the high jump or long jump. You're not going to. We just all agree that running and seeing who can go the farthest. Who invented picking up a rock and throwing it the farthest? Well, I did. No, it's yes. But that is the one thing that Pavel did very well in '98, was that he got a community together to try things out, to try this out, here's what we're doing, here's what it can do. And then honestly, I mean, no matter what Steve Maxwell thinks of me and my injuries, he was the person that brought the Turkish get-up to Dragon Door. I brought the goblet squat there. The clean and press, I don't know. When you look at Pavel's book, Russian Kettlebell Challenge, and you look at his challenge, then it's the snatch and the bent press. Those are the two exercises that you're supposed to do every day, not the swing and the Turkish get-up. So it is the most amazing thing is, I would say this, is that in the 24 years, 25 maybe, depending how you count it, they've become to the point that some of the shittiest training I see done on the internet and at gyms is done with kettlebells now. It only took 25 years for it to go from a very high standard to absolutely the
Ah,
most
yeah.
horrific thing I've ever seen. So hats off to all of you crappy personal trainers who don't have the intellectual
Yeah.
integrity
Oh
or
my.
courage to actually learn what the hell you're doing before you coach it.
Most definitely. And that's what
Oh,
I love what you're saying about putting it out there. I think that's the idea that I'm tinkering around with and that I'm actually pushing is the idea of this hybrid style. Where you're like, okay, listen, we take some and we actually do this. I talk to Angie so many times and I tell her, listen, I don't see anybody do it. We combine the kettlebell sport element with some hardstyle elements. We combine it into a circuit type of training. And the funny thing is, when I realized that even the sport guys don't think about this, is when I talked to Dennis Vazilev, and we had a conversation. And then he was kind of like, I remember because it was my first podcast that I had, and he was kind of like a little bit confused because I was like, well, because I paid him for a session and for the podcast, and then he said,
wait, you pay?
yeah,
Hello?
yeah, hey Dan, but
Hello?
yeah.
Ah, I hope this makes it to the. I don't know if this is going to make
it
it.
depends on the views, you know. It depends on the views. No, listen. The funny thing is, Dan, let me clarify. I booked him for a training session, and then I asked him if I can do an interview, and hook it onto the training session. And then I actually posted it, and this was the first kind of like podcast. So I thought, okay, well, let's keep it rolling. And so when I had this conversation with him, he was kind of like confused because I was like, listen, I don't want to compete with jerk, snatch, and long cycle. So I was like, well, kind of like, why are you booking me for? Kind of like, he didn't say it, but he was kind of confused. So then I said, well, because I want to use elements like the long cycle and the snatch and the jerk in the sports style in a circuit training and combine it with a get up or whatever. And he was like, wow, really? And so this is where I came up with, okay, people actually, I believe Steve Carter was the original hybrid, combining these ideas, and you guys combine these ideas after, especially those who went to Russia and then talked to these folks. And now I'm kind of like just putting it out there saying, I think this is a hybrid. You have both styles and you combine the best of both worlds and use it in a workout or training setting. And yeah, this is.
I will say this. Now I know that the Soviets are still, or Russians are still like the best in this sport, but it is an interesting thing. So he's no longer with us, but Yuri Sadiq is the world record holder in the hammer. And my friend Vasily and I actually, when kettlebells first came out, I actually talked to a Soviet hammer thrower and a Soviet Olympic lifter, and I asked him about kettlebells, and it was more like there was absolute confusion because what is an extremely small sport in Switzerland that very few people do? Is there a small sport?
You know, it's like Fünfkampf, the pentathlon, where you have to run and then give is it called the pentathlon? The track
Modern
and field?
pentathlon. Yeah.
Modern pentathlon?
You sword fight, you ride.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, to them, it was like the smallest. Why are we talking about that? It was such a small sport. And actually, I think what Pavel did so well is that, I mean, you can talk about GS all day long, but it's really like this. And I think Pavel did more for GS than any Russian ever did, because he got people talking kettlebells, and this group kind of went in and said, well, there's also a sport. You know, it'd be like me talking about the barbell and then someone raising their hand in the back. You know, there's a sport where we do bench press, squat, and deadlift with the barbell. And I would be up there on the stage going, really? You guys really? Oh, I didn't know you could compete with this thing. And somebody else in the back says, or you could snatch it and clean and jerk and add up the two numbers and call it a total. Really?
Really?
So the problem always, I think, Gregory, and this is just something that I always try to sprinkle into our conversations, is that the kettlebell is one I think, and obviously I think it's in that small number of tools that really helps high performance sports. Oh, and you can also take that single tool by itself and compete with it. In the same way you can take that barbell and do two different sports with it.
Yeah.
You follow? And I think what
Most definitely.
hurts us sometimes in our conversations is that the GS people think, oh yeah, we've been doing this since 1732. We've lost all the history books. Well, you didn't lose them. It didn't happen. It's
Even that's crazy. Even when you look back in the physical culturists who were using kettlebells, they were throwing it, pressing it, lifting it. One of the first exercises actually was with the bras tendu. Yeah, the bras tendu, right?
Yeah, you just hold it. In fact, that was in one of the Olympic games, in the Olympic lifting, where they called it the crucifix. Yeah.
Yeah, the crucifix,
but,
right? Yeah.
But here's the thing. If we were both yoga people, I would be sitting up here and saying, what people are talking about yoga is about 100 years old. And if we were talking about the Scottish Highland Games, the Highland Games that we're talking about now, in fact, saying that it's 100 years old, what we consider the Highland Games now is radically different than the Highland Games even 50 years ago, or at least in my career, 40 years ago. But now but if you've been doing Highland Games for 15 years without knowing the history, you'd be like, oh, this has been from the Picts and the Scots were doing this while they were fighting the Roman Empire. Yeah, they might have been doing stone puts and they might have been doing the caber. Yeah. But the hammer is only from the use of the axle, and it might only be 500 years. Yeah, not being a jerk. I'm just saying this is a very common thing.
And putting it on the map, actually, I love how you phrase this. You say two things which make so much sense. It is such a fringe sport. The kettlebell sport is, and no disrespect to anybody competing, but it is an incredibly fringe sport, and you have almost, I would say, if you are trying to make a name for yourself in the kettlebell world as one of the best GS coaches out there, you have a very small margin of being successful, or very small possibility to even make a living. Put it like this.
So I make about, I don't, do you understand dollars there in Switzerland?
Yeah. Most definitely.
So I make about $15 million a year coaching GS. Okay, that's a joke. Yeah. That's a joke.
Yeah.
It's
impossible. Never.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
If you coached, keep going.
But people, I do understand this as well. When I look at Dennis, for example, he's bred to do this. He's burning for a kettlebell sport, and the numbers show, his habits show, his technique shows. It's awesome. Yet, understanding that you want to make it applicable to many people, because actually being successful is when you take the huge part of the population who doesn't lift and want to actually try to help them, and this is where you can make a living, and then you take this powerful tool and make it accessible. This is where the success is and lies. And the funny thing is, I've realized this as well, even with my content. The more complicated my content is, when I talk about stuff that I really love and I go down the rabbit hole, the less views it gets. So then I'm like, okay, this is more like for the dedicated folks. You got to open it up and make it accessible so that people understand it. People start lifting, adhering to the program.
Let's talk about making money as a discus throwing coach. It's the same issue. So I don't charge for coaching the discus, and there's a good reason. I feel I owe it to my coaches but you honestly think you're going to make a lot of money as a discus throwing coach? No. You can make a lot more. My friend Gernot, he's got a whole bunch of gyms just south of you, close to you in Germany. Gernot's a former discus thrower, and he makes all of his money on fat loss, 30 for 30 workouts. You've heard are the Les Mills gyms?
Yeah.
They're huge, right?
Yeah, huge.
What did he do? What did he do as a sport? Do you know?
No.
He was a discus thrower.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, a very good one too.
Oh, we took it far.
But here's the thing. You got Dan, John, Gernot, Les, all discus throwers.
Yeah.
Do any of us,
I didn't even know that you were throwing the discus. I didn't know that. I just knew kettlebells, 10,000 swing challenge, Dan John. That's the guy that I have to talk to. That's what I knew. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. Look, I'll
See?
send you videos. I'll send you videos.
Yeah, I know then. Now I know. But originally, when I heard your name, it was for me. It was like, okay, kettlebells, 10,000 swing challenge was he's one of the OGs who was with the guys who started this thing, and then I found out you were throwing the discus.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and my point is that you always have, if you want to have any kind of economic security, and things are different here in the States than they are in Europe, you have to branch out to the everybody else client, which means you have to deal with people want to move better, feel better, look better. And those are the, and so for me, I use my kettlebell skills that help my athletes. I transition them into how I can help the general population or anybody who's willing to pay me money.
Awesome. So Dan, let's pivot a little bit into the last half an hour that I have with you.
Okay.
Yuri Verkhoshansky. I bought his book. All right. The Special Strength Training Manual for Coaches.
Yeah.
Yuri Verkhoshansky.
Yeah.
I read 2 of his books.
Yeah.
Incredibly hard to read. I remember I picked up one of his books because Pavel always talks about this guy.
Okay.
So
we're not going to talk about him.
Oh, okay. Well, about Yuri? May I ask why?
I've talked to some of the best Soviet athletes ever, and they say universally that the materials that we have here in the West from the Soviets basically they sat down with athletes, asked them, and then packaged it into extremely complicated words.
Wow.
Like my friend Vasily said one time, Dan, and Vasily has a real strong accent and almost like a Barcelonian Russian accent.
Okay.
Barcelona.
Yeah, Spain.
Yeah, Barcelona.
Yeah,
They got the
Barcelona.
Barcelona.
Yeah.
So he talks and he goes
Spanish Russian.
and he says to me one time, Dan, he goes, the great mass of Soviet lifters. Yeah. He goes, they were illiterate. They wouldn't have been able to read this. They see, he goes, in his time, education was so bad in the Soviet Union. A lot of the lifters, they were being raised to be manual laborers, and they couldn't have read any of this. And he meant literally any of it. But I'm starting to think now he might have meant the more complicated stuff like you were talking about. I'm not a fan. I think much of it's a bunch of crap. Always have thought that.
Wow. And yeah, because that's,
can you take that and turn it? Can you take that book and turn out an athlete who's going to be on the world championship stage in 4 years?
Well, my question for you, Dan, is that's actually, no, it's not a question, it's a statement. I knew when I started reading this, I was like, this clashes with everything that I have learned up until this far. I haven't learned a lot until now, but I was like, I almost gave up on the book. Yeah. But I kept pushing through because, like you say, it's incredibly complicated material. Incredibly complicated material. Yet, do you think, and that's my honest question, do you think you can really, there's nothing, or you would discount it, say, no, listen, everything that's in there.
Oh, no, it's not nothing, but, I think it's up, I think I have it up here. I've got, up here somewhere, I've got Louis' West Side book.
Yeah.
And honestly, if you just, Pavel's Power to the People probably does a better job summarizing it. But when you finish Power to the People, if you actually finish it, it's a pretty simple program. He obviously has his bias, in a lot of things, but
yeah, we all have. Right?
Yeah, we all have. And I know I come off as a jerk when I say this kind of things, but and then the other thing you just and I know Louis just passed away, so I am not being at all rude, but Louis was absolutely clear that to do his methods, you had to be using anabolic support. And he says famously in the one video, which I admire him for saying, he goes, it's not illegal to take drugs, it's illegal to get caught.
To get caught. Yeah.
And I love that phrase because it's like, God, here's the truth. Thank you, Louis, for being honest. I get these programs from people and it's like, yeah, this is what we're doing with our athletes. And then like 5 years later, I go, how are your athletes doing? And it's like a dumpster fire of heart attacks, blown out pieces of body. And and now here's the thing. And I think I told you this before. I was told it wasn't Yuri, it was another guy, that in the Soviet Union, and this guy was another thrower from one thing, after the fall of the wall, a whole bunch of Soviets and East European coaches just swelled the ranks in America and Canada. Mm-hmm. And it didn't take us long to figure out that a lot of these guys were full of shit. I got so many stories, but it's inappropriate to talk about them because most of them are dead now. Mm-hmm. But this was the idea. Once you went to the next level and you started on anabolic support as a hammer thrower, they knew if you were taking drugs already because they expected a 10-meter improvement almost instantly when you went on anabolics. Yeah. And if you didn't, 10 meters?
Yeah, that's crazy.
So I threw the hammer. I was a discus thrower, but I threw the hammer 62 meters. Mm-hmm. Going from 62 to 72?
That's massive.
That puts me in that, that puts me in that Now I'm basically sneaking up on national, international levels. And all I did was pop a pill. So this has to be discussed when we talk about these resources. And I know I come off as a douche when I talk about it. And I know I upset a lot of people, especially the druggies. But I say this all the time. I don't give a shit if you take drugs. I don't care. But if you get a massive heart attack or you get some kind of weird, like that one bodybuilding coach that gave his athletes this wrong stuff, and they all got a form of leukemia from it. I just don't want to hear towards the end of your days on earth about how you found Jesus. Personally, I didn't know he was lost. He's very, I can give you a roadmap. I can show you where he's sorry. I don't want to hear about, don't go on, don't preach to me after you beat me in a championship. Don't now preach to me about how you were so wrong back then and now you're sorry. Contact the organization, tell them you were cheating, and demand that I get that first place trophy. And you know who you are.
It's funny how you mentioned that people who were on drugs or just on steroids and then they get off of it, they have achieved all this, let's say, like fame and wealth, and they make a name for themselves, and then they stand up and say, well, I think the bodybuilding world has gone crazy with roids. And then you're like, well, but you're one of those who started it. How can you even, and I say this, I mean, I even have, I respect, these are legends who say this, but then it comes off like, it's like, wow, really? Why don't you just shut up? Why? Or you could be like, listen, I took them because I wanted to get my piece of the pie. So I understand these youngsters who want to do it like I did it. And there are risks involved. Stop it. I don't think you cannot have an opinion now being the king of the crop and now telling youngsters it's dangerous. We know it's dangerous, but then be like, comes off a little bit. Yeah, it's the same vibe.
I have 2 or 3 friends of mine and a couple of friends who have died, of course, who are absolutely candid about their drug use. Mm-hmm. And to me, and I since it was private, well, the one said it at the Olympic Training Centers, but I'll give him a little grace. But very, very often I'll get, here's one thing I had a guy tell me one time. Dan, everyone makes a big deal about steroids. At most, I improved 10% on them.
That's huge.
Hold on. Wait, hold on. I cleaned for 182.5 clean without, I clean 182.5. 20% more? 10% more?
Yeah.
That's 18 kilos. To 20 kilos.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Well, instead of just being a part-time Olympic lifter who, then Sorry to get it, folks. I'm sure you tuned in to listen to kettlebells and all this, but this stuff, I don't know. We got on this tangent and now we're on it. But let's move on from here because I find this very frustrating. Especially when you find out the truth.
Which is sometimes, sometimes you find out stuff, and in that case, let's just jump a little bit back because for me it's so incredibly important, because when I read materials like this, I'll just put it in perspective. We read materials which are very complicated, and it makes it seem incredibly advanced. And when I read stuff like this, I remember you saying, well, if you perform better, it's not because you suddenly started doing 4 sets of 3 and before you did 4 sets of 5.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So this keeps ringing in my mind. So I'm reading incredibly complicated stuff. And just for the record, we have a lot of coaches tuning in to this podcast. So, and people who listen, who coach other people as well. So how can we take this, Dan? And for those who don't know, Yuri Verkhoshansky, he's a Russian sports scientist. Pavel talks about him. He does incredibly complicated stuff. What's the baseline, Dan? Because I get it confused sometimes as well. Is it just everything is plain easy? It's hill sprints, it's jumps, it's deadlifts, it's cleans, and then the rest is on the field. Get better at your, right?
Here's the other thing that bothers me.
Where's the bottom line?
Because of this stuff, and it's funny because they'll give these guys credit for inventing periodization. Americans were periodizing long before these writers were born. I'm still a believer that you should have about 6 weeks a year of active rest. Okay. About 6 weeks a year. It's funny. Now we call it active rest. We used to call it rest.
Right. This sounds better, right?
It just said, you go play another. In fact, I suggest go play another sport about half the year. Get the hell out of here.
Wow.
And then we had this period of general training, we called it the off-season training, where you worked on all your weaknesses. You tried to fix your emotional issues, your weakness, your physical weaknesses, any issues with mobility. Then there was this preseason where you tried to up the ante a little bit in your sport, but still experimenting, putting yourself out there, testing things. If you had a 12-week preseason, I loved having 12 competitions as a thrower and as a coach in the preseason, I wouldn't say every Saturday. It'd be nice to have one on a Tuesday. It'd be good to have one on a weird day, like a morning competition in a rainstorm. It'd be nice to have a competition on a Saturday with perfect weather, where everyone sleeps in and meets at 11 o'clock. However you work out, and just keep throwing different things. And then you have in season where you're going to cut the volume of lifting, and you're going to become very, very sport specific. Folks, that worked for generations. When America was the best in the world in track and field, we did it that way. That's how we did things, and we were the best. And of course, don't forget your beloved Werner Gunther lost to Mike Stolz at the Olympic finals, who basically trained just like I just told you. In fact, his weight workouts were as simple as Jorn Svensson's workouts. It was just 1 or 2 exercises a day. You go hard, you do some jumps, you go do your event. You clean and you bench press, you do some jumps, you go really heavy, and then you go throw the shot for a long time. And people say, well, that's not very, yeah, he won the Olympic gold medal. So I'm going to listen to that guy a little bit. And by the way, gentle listeners, if you want his programs, it's in my archives at danjohn.net, and just Google Mike Stolz, and it should come up right away. Okay.
So if we would allocate percentages of, let's say, like to become a great athlete and to win Olympic gold or whatever, you have 100%, right? So let's allocate this 100%. I'd like to get your take. How much would you allocate to mental?
100.
And give me, yeah. Yeah, I know you said that last time. Mental, training, the sport-specific stuff, and weight room.
Okay. So for me, I've always had a yin yang model for the relationship between the technical work and the strength room. And they work together. Now, the key is those, those two little eyes that are in the yin yang. So we'll say this is the strength side. So there's a little bit on the strength side that we would work technical. Maybe for my shot putter, we'd put a vest on him. Maybe for my shot putter, we'd have her throw with a slightly heavier, standing throws with a heavier shot put. So there's that. Okay. So in the way, okay, I did that wrong. Hold on just a sec. So as a strength coach in the weight room, we might do knee or press, explosive for a shot putter, explosive, boom, boom, boom. Yeah. For a discus thrower, we might do some kind of safe rotational exercise. Of course, now I would just say the suitcase carrying, just leave it at that. Out on the field, when we're throwing, so we might have a little bit of wearing a vest when we shot put, throwing an overweight implement a little bit. Maybe, well, it's real obvious when you watch sprinters. Not everyone agrees with this, but if you're a 400-meter runner, there's some value in doing 500 meters for time. And there's value in doing 300 meters for time, because it's not 400, but it's, we'll by looking at that 300-meter time and the 500-meter time, we can infer certain things about conditioning and what qualities we might need to tweak a little bit. So for me, it's, if you can think yin yang with some technical work in the weight room, some weight work on the technical side.
So it's always you're in the sport-specific field, for me to reiterate and to understand it correctly. You have the sport-specific training, that's the discus thrower, right? Yeah. And then you sprinkle in some weight stuff on the specific
overload,
training side.
Underload, a longer implement, throwing a long stick, or all those kinds of things. Yeah.
And then you have in the weight room where you do your basic stuff, you overlap it with something like you said that's some explosive work with the barbell, for example, that fits.
And it could be something strange. That's what Bondarchuk does so well. He had Dane one time. He took I think it was 40 kilos, and he asked him to so turn and then press. Wow. Bring it down, turn, and press. And it was just, he goes, because if that makes you throw farther, he would just experiment with things.
Yeah, it's the rotation, right? And then
so when I'm coaching,
experimenting,
when I'm coaching throwers, this is 12 years ago now, but when my daughter, Lindsay, we had her and Chase Callis, they did kettlebell snatches before they threw the discus, because I felt the kettlebell snatch reflected, it was an experiment I was doing with them. And then when they were doing, we also had we call it the BFR. I don't want to swear, but big effing rock. And it was about a 30-pound rock, and they would turn and throw it. So out on the field, while they were throwing the shot put in discus, they were mixing it with kettlebell work, some heavy rocks, and we had a heavy vest that they would do some throws with. Actually, it was a heavy sandbag, and they would snap it. So it was like, do you know what a good morning or hyperextension?
Yeah.
So it was a throwing hyperextension.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't, and I kept that muted because I was worried about hurting the back.
Yeah, most definitely.
So to me, that's the ultimate. It's called mixed training. Yeah, it's when you're lifting and throwing. Yeah. Or
combining it. Yeah.
At the same time. And that comes from Peter Sheen, the great German coach.
Peter Sheen.
Tshien.
Tshien. Chine.
Chine? Yeah. Peter Chine.
I gotta check it out. And a German coach.
Yeah.
German coach. All right.
Hard to find his material. Hard to find it.
Okay.
There's a lot of great coaches that didn't write books and were before the internet, or they were like, and so you have to go to like old magazines. So up here, back here. Yeah. So just to let you know how, I don't just sit around and smoke dope all day. I work hard.
Yes.
So like, this is Discobolus magazine from 1963. Smells like old library in my office because it's an old library. And I have these studies that they were trying to do. December 1965,
So much value.
Yeah. And so what I do with these is this gives me a chance. Like the Brits had a guy named Bill Tancred and Howard Payne, and these outstanding coaches that really we have forgotten a little. The Brits probably, I hope, didn't forget Howard Payne. But there's these great coaches that Howard wrote a couple books, but some of the others never wrote books, so we don't. And of course, who's going to read a book, when I can go online? Yeah.
Well, my question then, you see value in mimicking the sport-specific exercise. Let's say, like for example, let's take another example, a baseball pitcher.
No.
So you see value in experimenting, using your sport-specific exercise, like the pitch.
Can I tell you what I do with pitchers?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, so yes, we do use heavy balls, but we don't throw them this way because it's too hard on the rotator cuff. We throw heavy balls this way. So you got the ball and you throw it backwards, so that, if you read Meyer's anatomy trains, we're trying to build up the opposite train. Mm-hmm. Here's an interesting thing with American baseball, and I recommend this to javelin, a spear tossing, suitcase carries for pitching speed. When you do suitcase carries, somebody explained it to me after I told them to do suitcase carries to throw the ball faster, and then their physio, their trainer figured out why it worked. I don't care why it worked. If you throw faster, we're doing it. I don't want to know why.
It works.
It worked, man. I don't care. Jeez, 90% of my coaching is I don't care. Did it work?
Let's do it.
Let's do this. So with this pitcher, maybe on the field, we might have a medicine ball, because I want two hands will be safe, or just doing explosive stuff. Suitcase carries and these backward throws would blend in very nicely on the field of play.
And if you would say, okay, let's have the pitcher throw a heavier ball,
no,
doesn't this interferes, right, with his?
It's interference, yeah.
So that's what we have to understand is the sport-specific training that can really help, like for example, building up your brakes, right, with these back throws, right?
Yeah, exactly what you do, yeah.
Right, but at the other hand, you don't want to interfere with the basic movement. For example, a basketball player starting dribbling with a heavier ball, no, this mixes up your perception, right, and your fine-tuning skills.
Well, is it that wonderful little thing? It's that bicycle that the guy made, and when I turn a bike this way, it goes this way. Well, he engineered it so when you go like this, it goes this way. And it's a way to study what's called neuroplasticity, how your brain works. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, I could not ride this bicycle. Now, if I practice on it every day for a couple of weeks, I will learn how to ride this bicycle that goes the wrong way. Here's the funny thing. When I jump on my normal bicycle, there is a few minutes where I can't ride a bicycle anymore. Now, the interesting thing, why there's a phrase in American English, it's like the phrase is, it's like riding a bicycle. So like if you've been celibate for a long time, but you've had sex before, you kind of remember how to do it. Mm-hmm. It's like riding a bicycle. Mm-hmm. If you haven't typed in a long time, within a few seconds, it's like riding a bicycle. what's interesting that they say about this neuroplasticity is that you'll be sitting there on your old bike, the one you grew up as. You started riding this when you were 5. You've been riding bikes your whole life. And then all of a sudden you'll go, oh, and you remember how to ride a normal bike again. And it's been an important insight from this, is that what we think is happening is that when you throw these heavy balls, is that you're actually just starting a whole new set of synapses.
Yeah.
But the problem is now you have competing synapses in your brain.
Wow. I love this.
And you have this is a maybe, folks. But now, is there value in having multiple ways to do something? Yes. But going from the violin to the viola, going from the violin to the bass, you might be fine. But going from the violin to the viola, you might have more struggles because they're a little too close. So what I'm starting to think, and most people are starting to think, is that if it's huge differences, it seems to help a lot. So a female shot putter throwing a 16-kilo rock doesn't hurt her 4-kilo shot put.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I see where you're coming from.
But throwing a 4.5-kilo shot put,
wow.
In the shot, I'm not sure. I'm just not sure. But the idea is you're too close. So you're getting, now you have to start a whole new line of thoughts. Wow. So if you're grossly apart, it seems to help.
That's great.
I learned, and that's why when I was an American football coach, when you go against the scout team, I noticed that if I had, American football only allows 11 defenders, but if I would put 14 defenders on the field, 3 more than are supposed to be there, the quarterback would keep doing all of his reads right on. And that extra 3 was such a whoa, he would throw tighter throws.
Yeah.
But if I only added 1, it wasn't enough to get him thinking, to get him zoning. So to be a quarterback, you have to go wide, narrow, very quickly in focus. Having 14 defenders seemed to help narrow him. Having 11, it was like putting 1 more cone on the field. It didn't have any impact.
So the intensity or the irritation has to be big enough compared to what you're usually doing for it to get some benefit out of it that you would normally have. But if it's too close, you probably are messing with your existing habits and synapses, and now they're getting cut and something new is built because it's too close, right? Somewhere along those lines, right?
You can think about with competition. You use competition bells, and I have two problems with competition bells. One, they're made out of steel, and when they hit each other, they bounce. I don't like that. And the other, and I don't like the way the handle is. But the third thing, they all look alike. Now, why is that a problem? I can guarantee if you're setting yourself up to snatch the 32K for 100 reps in 5 minutes, okay? And you're training that, and I put a 4K in your hand, how long does it take you to figure out the speed and the hit? Have you ever noticed that when you go from a big bell to an extremely light bell, not in the swing, not in the goblet squat, not in the press, but in the snatch, there's like, you tend to you have to regroove the rhythm to snatch a 4K?
Well, the good thing about just for the competitions is, I always look at the color, then my brain automatically.
But you know what I'm saying?
I know where you're coming from, most definitely.
You have to make tempo and rhythm changes
most
to
definitely.
deal with the bell. And a 4K, like for the one workshop, it's called Fit Ranks, and part of what I had to do was pass this kind of complex little circuit to pass the course. So I had to snatch, I think it was 8 kilos 80 times.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember having to tamper down my snatch.
Yeah, the velocity. You have to completely switch because there's too much energy coming from your hips. If you're used to heavier weights, then the bell always flies outside your hand. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was getting worried that I was going to do a 360 on it, you know? So I made a decision that I think I made the decision just to do one-handed because it was so light. I wasn't going to get the fatigue. And my thought was, it's kind of an interesting thought, is that I don't mind having, you know, I only have to make one adaptation, but if I switch hands, I have to rethink the whole thing through again. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But this concept of neuroplasticity, I don't know how well you know the show Seinfeld at all, but do you know Seinfeld?
Yeah, I know the show, but I've never seen one of those episodes.
One of the things that happens is George Costanza decides that he's going to do, since his whole life is a miserable failure, that from now on, he's going to do everything the opposite of what he would normally do. And so he walks up to a beautiful girl and he says, I live with my parents, I have no job, and I look like this. And she goes, really? How are you? And he ends up getting this great job. Well, Marty Gallagher uses that example, and Marty Gallagher, the great powerlifting coach and great powerlifter, uses that example to talk about what we're talking about here, is that doing the opposite worked really well for him. So one of the things Marty's experimenting with is he's always walked in heavy hands and did hill sprints for his conditioning. So he said, I'm going to do the opposite. And he decided to get into shape swimming. So he goes to the local pool, puts in the eyeglasses and and he does the thing. And he's talking about how his conditioning is actually weirdly getting better in his body composition. Now, we all know with body fat and body composition that we want our exercises to be inefficient as possible. Now, if Marty decides to become an international level swimmer and trains 7 hours a day, within a few months, because he's becoming so efficient as a swimmer, his body composition gains are probably going to the opposite, because it actually helps to be a little fatter to swim better. So his efficiency in the pool will be, efficiency in the pool is going to make him fatter. So just before you hit that, it's time to go find another way to lose fat.
The crazy thing is, you're now just proving my point of why there is a need to combine the sport
hard
and
style
hard style
with sport.
Because if you're only
hard
tuning,
style is very inefficient.
Yes, because if you're only using efficiency, you're not making any gains. You're totally working into endurance then.
And
I mean, if you're not on professional level, and even on professional level, you have the lightweight dudes lifting these heavy weights because they're completely efficient. And you know what's funny? The funny thing is, I saw very well-known sport guys, legends in the game, kind of tweak their Instagram to a certain extent, where they started doing, squats and press and stuff, stuff that the rest of the world does, and something caught my eye, and I was like, wow, you're not used to tension. Your getup is a mess. You don't have no tension, my man, because you're used to working efficiently, using your body as a lever,
Yeah.
Fascinating. No tension. So the antidote would be do some hard style swings, some strict presses, some squats. Fascinating. I was like, wow. If you are a heavyweight in the game, you show a Turkish get up like this, everybody respects you, but everybody be like, I don't know, that's a Turkish get up. Fascinating.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Wait, pardon me. Yes? Do you need me? Okay. Sorry, it's my daughter.
Yeah.
Come say hi to Gregory. So you're hitting on it exactly. And this is my friend Gregory.
Hi, Gregory.
Hello.
Lindsay.
She's nice to meet you.
She's that state champion shot put I was telling you about.
Awesome. That's what's up. Nice to meet you, Lindsay.
Nice to meet you too.
Awesome.
Okay. That's my baby, and she has her baby Leo, and he's wonderful.
Awesome.
So I think this is a point that it took us a while to get to, but if you can remember this, I think this is where. So with your body composition clients, okay, there has to be some nutritional intervention. Okay,
Yeah.
some,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that is. If it's a way of eating, like whatever it does, Atkins, Eads, vegan, whatever it is. Vegan doesn't seem to work well for body comp from what I've seen. But whatever it is, okay, you're going to do high. There's got to be some. After that, though, everything becomes inefficient exercise. And when someone starts to master, if you're in an aerobics class, pretty soon aerobics class gets pretty easy. Come over to me, we're going to do kettlebell work. And when you master how to cheat at every single exercise, we're going to have you go over to the powerlifting platform and train with Marty. When after about 6 months of heavy lifting, we're going to send you over to the Olympic lifting platform with Dave Turner. And if you, because you're those first couple of months while you sort of suck in every of these new endeavors, that's where the real body composition is going to happen.
Wow.
I have a book up here by Millie Brown, and she's got this great, it's called, it's for beginning triathletes. And I always loved the book, so I bought another copy of it. She calls it float, coast, and shuffle. That's how you do a triathlon in the beginning. You float in the water, you coast on your bike, and you shuffle when you're supposed to run. And I love it. So now here's the thing, 5 years later, you're in your high-tech aerodynamic suit, you got your aerodynamic hat, you got your aerodynamic gloves, and you ride the whole, triathlon like this.
Yeah.
You're not going to burn as much fat as when you're on my bike riding like
on an air bike. Destroy yourself. Wow. I love this.
So efficient. So now we're going to slide over to discus throwing. Now, who wins in the discus throw? Well, there are some physical things. If you're 2 meters tall and we have the same technique, you're going to throw farther. But we want to have the most efficient technique we can possibly have. There has to be a tempo to it. There has to be a rhythm to it. He who wins the rhythm at the big meets wins the big meets. You don't want to be hitting the cage with your throws. So in track and field, does body composition count? Yeah, there is. It does make a difference, but you need your energy systems and your DNA, and hopefully good DNA, to work together to get you around the track faster. So as a runner, thrower, jumper, you need to have extremely efficient technique. And then in the field event side, you need to have the rhythm of it. And on the track side, you need to have that ability, well, either the high end speed to just, leave the pack behind you, or the kind of speed endurance that it needs to win your particular event.
So would you say a track and field athlete needs the efficiency in his sport, of course, to max out the maneuver with the as energy wise, with a capacity that doesn't burn him out or burn her out, but it has to be the sweet spot, right? But when this person hits the weight room, let's do some inefficient stuff.
No. Well, in track and field, you have to actually be extremely efficient in the weight room, because you want all your neuroplasticity. You want all your, you want the biggest engine you can get at the lowest price.
So you wouldn't give a track and field athlete or a runner a heavy squat?
No, you might. No, actually, that might be really good. 5 sets of 1, 5 sets of 2. So
again, this big difference, right?
Yeah. Whereas a bodybuilder might do, like Tom Platz, he used to do 4 sets of 20 in the back squat with 405, 4 sets of 20 with 185 pounds.
Yeah.
And, he would get up to 300 kilos for, reps. He's a bodybuilder.
Yeah. Completely different. And we have to understand this. Yeah.
And for him, the volume and intensity and the short rest periods, and of course, and all the other garbage they put in themselves, that's what they're doing. Was, there's that famous story of Tom Platz and Fred Hadfield having this squat off. And that's great. But you would never hand a basketball to either of those guys, nor would you hand a discus to them. Those guys were built, their DNA was perfect for that squat off. But so, and I've got great respect for both of them. And in fact, I've got all their books. But at the same time, you got to be very careful about. So here's something that worked for a power lifter and it worked for a bodybuilder. Yeah, it's not going to work for a track. Now, does that stuff work for an American football player or rugby player? Then I have to say, well, yeah, I want my rugby players to weigh,
right?
I want them to weigh 110 kilos and Gregory weighs 80. If he wants to play at the level he's at, he's got to get stronger and he's got to get bigger. You got it. So we have to slide you over into mass building because your opponents weigh 110. And yeah, you might be more explosive on the first play, but they're just going to wear you down with that extra 20, 30 kilos.
It's context, right? This the word of
welcome
the word
to
of
my world.
Yeah, the word of fitness. So two things, Dan. I'm stealing a lot of your time. I'm always waiting for you to say, okay, Gregory, that's it. But I keep pushing until you say stop, right? Okay. So Dan, two things. What I love is you just, because I heard about it today, because I'm listening to this audiobook from Charles Duhigg, Habits, or the Power of Habits, I think it's called.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Okay.
And because you said, let's take this complicated stuff away with the weight room. I'd like to have you perform a track and field or a shot put in the rain or in the storm, or right, or something that is, because it may happen, right? It may happen. We have bad weather. Now you better step up to the plate. And now what's crazy is, in the book he says, Michael Phelps' story. The guy jumps into the pool is a habit machine. He does everything according to habits. That's why he was one of the greatest. One of the reasons. So his goggles fill up with water. But he manages to pulls off a world record with blind. He was blinded. Every other athlete would have been caught off guard or would have stopped. But his coach made him run laps in the dark. Because he anticipated. It just reminded me.
There are some good books out. I like the book. I think it was in Talent Code, where it talked about Rory McIlroy, I think it is, the Northern Irish golfer. And as a kid, he wasn't real rich, but he had an old washing machine in his backyard. And he used to just practice chipping and his goal every day was to get a certain number of balls into the hole of it. And the interesting thing is that, I've talked to golfers and they said, oh yeah, if you just practice chipping as a young kid, because it teaches you every other skill of the game of golf. So he just fell into this thing. And it's interesting how when we look at these people who are superlative, very often it's those the gems that they share with us. Swimming in the dark, whatever. I mean, every sport, something happens and you have got to learn. For example, if I'm going to train bicyclists, I'm going to train them to get off their bicycles so we can get the wheels replaced if they get a flat. I'm going to train them. We're going to have timed events where they have to get off their bike and do a quick repair. Or, we've got to teach them these things.
Because you see it all the time. The guys crying on the sidewalk because the bike's broken. And yeah.
You got to train it. You got to train it mentally. When Germany had that great run a couple of years back in the World Cup, it was obvious that they were training dead ball situations harder than any other team. I don't know soccer football very well, but it was crystal clear to me that when Germany was in a dead ball situation, they were a little bit better than their opponents. When the game was wide open, when it was one-on-one, very often the opponents were better. But when the ball stopped and the team had to play, Germany seemed to pick up. So the job of a coach sometimes is to just say, okay, we're not the best here, but they're not here. They're not very strong here. So let's beat them here. Let's beat them where they're weak or what they're not focused on. And we have a great American coach, I think, Bill Belichick, and his rule is do your job. And he focuses, and it's interesting because my high school coach, our defense was based on the idea that if everyone did their job, and usually you have 3 jobs. I'm doing the European way to count to 3 versus this way, the American way, just so I don't lose your audience.
They're mostly Americans, but it's totally fine.
But if I did my 3 jobs and everyone else on the defense did their 3 jobs, that meant that your team we were covering 33 things. That means to beat us, you had to get to your 34th, 35th, and 36th things you do well. Well, that's pretty hard to do, it's hard to find your 34th best thing you do, especially when we've shut down the 33 things you do best. And so when you work with athletes, that's why I like to throw in crappy conditions. Most of the time I coach kids on grass or AstroTurf versus concrete, because I want them to have a little slip and slide when they do their discus or shot put work. Yesterday I worked with my javelin thrower out here on the asphalt because I wanted him to practice on a real hard, crappy surface, because very often in track meets here in Utah, there might be a runway, or it might be grass, or it might be asphalt. And you've got to practice that. You've got to be prepared mentally. And asphalt, by the way, when you stab the implement, the impulse, the throw itself, asphalt slides, by the way, because there's little tiny rocks on it. So you got to get used to that little boom, that boom. I remember, so one of the jobs as a coach isn't just necessarily have all these charts and programs and you should be peaking. You might be, Gregory, in the best shape of your life, but if you've never thrown the rein, I'm going to kick your ass.
Yeah. I love this. You know what, just, I get this image where, like, I'd rather have a coach who takes a bird's eye view of the fundamental things that are necessary for me to be at my best at whatever it is, then instead of coming up with 30 different charts where we train this type of speed, this type of speed, this type of speed, and now it rains and now it's all gone. I can't compete.
So I have my athlete, I work at this university, and I have a thrower who I've improved in 1 year 50% in the discus. And Saturday she won the conference meet, which I'm very proud of.
Wow.
And when you watch me coach her, there's no charts, there's no forms. I'm constantly trying to challenge. I love the word neuroplasticity. I love it. I'm constantly trying to challenge her. So I will come up and I'll say, I want you to do this on this throw. And I'll put weird things in her hands. I'll put bags, so she has to jump over bags. She has to touch a cone with her foot. She has to do that. Constantly challenging her so that the whole throw is basically the same, but we're adding a little bit of something to it. So she has to keep rethinking what we're trying to do here. Yeah.
Fascinating.
And if you trust me, you improve. And if you don't, you don't.
Trust the process, right?
Maybe write that down somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. I wrote many things down that you told me, and it now just, it was great. It's like the antidote. So when you go into complex stuff like this, because I knew I gotta ask Dan John. Now, one thing, the Easy Strength book. When is it? Is it already out?
No. In fact,
do we have a date on this? Because I gotta read your stuff.
Fall, and we are at 303 pages, 106,000 words.
Wow. So fall 22 is the.
I think so. I think so.
Okay, awesome.
And then on the site, what I'm thinking of doing on Dan John University is just letting people have the book basically for free. But here's the idea: is I'm going to do a video introduction to every chapter, and then so video introduction, read the chapter, boop, video. So there's me talking about what you're about to read. I think this is 2022. We have the technology.
Video is powerful. Video
And
works
then it'll be
incredibly well.
it'll be a book, it'll be an audio book, it'll be a video plus audio,
Awesome.
video
Yeah.
plus written book.
Oh,
I like that.
I'm going to get it
I like
most
that,
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's going well. Huh?
One last thing. It's awesome to hear it, Dan. One last thing. I have just like to get your take on this, because I've talked with Sean Mosen, I've talked with Paul McElroy from Ireland, and we both came kind of to the same conclusion, and I'd like to get your take. We talked about efficiency, right? So if we, let me set this up. If we implement a movement pattern for a certain exercise that doesn't work, yet we're still forced to do it, then I have some kind of gripe with it, and I don't understand why we even do it. And Sean and Paul and me, we talked about the snatch test of RKC and StrongFirst. So this is just my thought. What I do not understand is, if we are telling people to do 100 snatches with a 24 kg in 5 minutes, so that's a 20 RPM. That's incredibly fast. And we teach, or as far as I understand it, I've been taught from Luca the snatch in hardstyle. And the idea is, I love how Bill Ash coins it. He says it's like powerlifting with kettlebells. Everything is incredibly tight, incredibly hard, so it's complete difference. The snatch in hardstyle, complete difference to a snatch in kettlebell sport. Why then do 100 reps with 24 kg with an efficient movement pattern? I do not get it. Because people are asking me.
I can't defend it.
Why?
Because it's the company policy. I don't. This is what they say,
it's what it is, right? Because because it doesn't make sense. I do understand, and just reiterate it. I love where hardstyle, RKC, StrongFirst, the idea where they come from. I love the tension. I love the idea of because it's even more applicable to people to understand it than kettlebell sport. I do get it. But why then make a coach who gets to know the philosophy and the training ideas and the methodology of this particular style, then make this person make a test where you completely need a kettlebell sport technique to master it better. And a 24 kg at 20 RPM is incredibly hard. Why?
You think it's hard? Okay, that's funny. You think it's hard, and I think it's okay. It's the standard.
You think it's easy? It's or how
I don't want to do it right now, but yeah, I don't think it's hard. Yeah, but it's just it's a standard. Here's the thing. For example, for the RKC2, the original plan was you had to press the beast and you had to do 200 snatches in 10 minutes within half an hour. I still like that standard, and of course, nobody else does. I've done that. And I'll tell you one thing, you learn a lot about, I'd recommend, by the way, doing the beast press first, in case you're wondering, just because those are really hard things to do.
So that's the idea, huh?
Yeah. And I can't defend it. I mean, I think it is what it is. What I change, if I'm thinking about doing more of a user course, and I've already started working on it. I call it the one kettlebell workshop, where we just do one kettlebell, and that would be things, and it would include the swing, the goblet squat, the windmill family, which includes the Turkish getup, in my opinion, the snatch, the walks, and the clean and press. The one kettlebell workshop. These are the things that most people can do most of the time. Yeah. And of course, I also think there's a value of a double kettlebell workshop, but really it would take, the workshop would last 7 minutes. So I don't know, this is the double clean, here's the double press, here's a double front squat.
It's a complete different beast, especially when you work with competitions. I love what you said when they bang, and you know what's beautiful? Even when you get the technique down pat and the fine tuning, even the 8 kgs don't bang anymore, because you get the feeling for them, and then they stop banging. Yeah. But it's a complete different beast with the competition in many cases. And and so let's say like, okay, the test has to be hard, which is it's great, because we need some toughness. I do get it. It's okay. But the movement pattern doesn't make sense for this time frame. So 20 RPM, and you can switch, right? You can switch every side.
I recommend 20, 20, 15, 15, 10, 10, 5, 5.
Okay, so you can switch all the time.
And I like, if you're part of my tribe, you don't stop at 100. You go for as many as you can, and you go as many as you can, because that way you can one up each other for the rest of the weekend. So if I'm coaching you, you had better pass that weekend. I almost put the F-bomb in there.
It's fascinating. See, this is where I see the
it's fine, but if you ever decide to have your own kettlebell organization, you're going to go to about 3 certs and go, I can't believe that asshole is going to represent me. And so you're going to want to have more standards.
Yeah, standards. Yeah.
It's been an interesting watching who has failed that test in the past. A lot of people come in, they look like they're big engines, but they can't handle it. And then you get somebody else who doesn't look very good. I'm thinking of one person who's he's a Roman Catholic priest, and he passed the test.
Wow.
And he does it because he trains a group at his parish, which I think that's just kind of a cool story. I mean, and he just dusted that snatch test off, but he doesn't, I mean, if we go out to dinner, you wouldn't know that he's can snatch that 100 times. He doesn't look it. So, but that's the thing, man, we are still so consumed by how we look in this particular field.
And
I will have to bounce though.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go to practice. Okay.
Dan,
I got track practice. So
I enjoyed 1.5 hours. Wow. This is, I feel blessed. It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, let's do this again,
most definitely.
And the thing is, I have strong opinions about some things, and I'm willing to discuss others. So, gentle listener, when you hear that I say it's no good, I didn't just smoke dope and just come up with an opinion. I wasn't sitting around drinking beers. Hey, bro, what do you think? No. When I have a strong opinion on something, it's not just from one conversation or one. It's 30, 40, 50 years in the build-up, okay?
If you're looking for kettlebell courses that can help you lose weight, build muscle, and improve your kettlebell technique, then check out the Leberstock Academy. Let us help you discover a new perspective on kettlebell training, making it simple and easy for you to understand. Join the waiting list of your desired course now and secure your spot when it's open for enrollment. Link is in the description.